Hello, everybody, and welcome to Worldsmithing, the show where we take a concept and world build it. I'm Cody.
And I'm Joe.
Boy, howdy.
Yep, that's a good clean open.
Yeah,
Hey,
that's what we got.
How have you been, Cody?
I've been good, all things considered. How have you been?
That's a very similar answer to my answer.
Nice.
Looking forward to some D&D.
Yes. We've been on hiatus on our campaign for 2 weeks, and it's like I'm getting the itchies.
Well, it's weird too because like we had been playing a little bit more frequently, but like for a lot of reasons,
Yeah,
life
we had
comes
more
at
time.
you, and sometimes people like, hey, sometimes you just need a week off here and there, but
Yeah.
So, hey Cody, what are we up to today?
Today in Fantasy Egypt, we're gonna do the micro episode. So
We're getting little.
yeah, we're getting tiny. We're gonna get the micro machines and like the little play places that you put them up, or the Polly Pockets or the Mighty Maxes. Do you remember those?
Oh, I remember all of those.
Yeah, my sister had Polly Pockets, and she would dress them up or not really dress them up, but like have them hang out near things. And then Mighty Max was like a thing, and I never really quite understood what the concept was, but I always had the kid like beating up all the weird looking things. And then I realized,
Could you dress up Polly Pockets?
I don't think they were big enough. Well, I guess it's okay. So it depends on the era in which you were a Polly Pocket fan.
Oh,
I think. Because
are we
I
gonna
think
get into the deep lore of Polly Pockets?
I don't. Well, okay. So I'm not super familiar. I'm super familiar with like when I was a kid and my sister had them. They were like little plastic. Like they were super small. Probably a super choking hazard. Probably why they didn't last as long as they did. But like, as I remember it, I don't know if they had like interchangeable clothes. Future me will look it up and tell me how stupid I am.
You were actually correct. Polly Pockets circa 1990s were too small to fit clothing on. Way to go, Polly Pocket historian.
But Mighty Max had these like small little guys that you could choke on. These were choking hazards, by the way. At least the smaller pieces were. And I didn't realize it until much later, but there was a Mighty Max show because they wanted to like, cross promote.
Gotta get that money, honey.
Yeah, and I didn't watch the show right away. I just had a bunch of those little Mighty Max playsets, and I didn't realize that the big dude was actually the kid's like friend. And I always thought he was like the main villain because he was just like a big, intimidating, bulky dude. So,
I didn't watch any of that.
So today we're getting into the micro stuff. So if you're familiar with world building, there's kind of a dual approach, and I kind of do I take a two-step process with my world building. I do wild sweeps with like a macro sort of world building. I think about themes and wide sweeping things, but as I get closer to my D&D session, I think about the micro stuff. I think about the stuff that I need to know for session 0, for session 1, and then kind of build out from there. So it's kind of like a big first, then little, and then kind of expand from there. So kind of doing it from both sides. And so today we're gonna talk about the setting that we're taking place for our session 0. And I'll start.
Yeah, sounds great.
Because one of the big set pieces in our session 1 is Cairo, Egypt. And we find ourselves in a bustling metropolis that extends to both sides of the Nile River. Most days are hot and humid, bustling with commotion of people. By the river, you can find many boats coming and going, and further in, you can find many sites of old historical buildings of Egypt's past. One can get very easily lost in the crowded streets, but fear not, you can easily get around using the Cairo tramway network or the Ramses railway station. A building of importance, the Shepards Hotel, is the crown jewel of a modern Egypt. People from all over come to this hotel in search for the luxuries of an ancient, mysterious world. With lavish gardens, granite pillars, and terraces, this hotel is a sight to see. The most popular attraction here, the Long Bar, is one of the busiest parts of the hotel, as guests, soldiers, and people from all over clamor for a drink. You can find just about any piece of information you want from all over the world here.
All right. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about a place that is in like the kind of the heart of Egypt. It is the Khan el Khalili, or Khalili, which is the market district of Cairo, and as such is a place where there are the goings and comings of everyone coming to Cairo. For explorers and tourists, it is a place to marvel at the architecture and culture of Egypt, a place where artisans display their works and merchants sell a variety of goods. While the district has gone through changes over the years, it is still a place where everyone comes to see the beauty, the vibrancy of the Egyptian people. The bazaar is full of bright colors and vibrant colors. It has unique and interesting spells from the spices and perfumes of the salesmen, and in general, it is a densely populated and noisy place. It's easy to get lost in a crowd. It's easy to become part of the masses. Now, the district also has its fair share of unsavory folk, including charlatans who pretend to know the whims of the gods, pickpockets, thieves, and people dealing in fake goods. While there are some legitimate merchants of the ancient and the arcane, for the most part, many claiming to sell real goods wouldn't know a true temple carving if it came up and bit them in the face.
Very nice. And the last location that we will talk about is an important one, the tomb of King Ramses VIII. The burial site of King Ramses VIII was recently discovered by local archaeologists and has since been taken over by the League of Explorers. The Valley of the Kings during the day is filled with tourists and tour guides taking in the beauty of ancient Egypt. At night, tomb robbers sneak in to pilfer these old tombs, and the wings of Set do their best to stop them. While outside the tomb is plain and blocked off by Egyptian officials, the inside is a winding labyrinth filled with secret lore, mechanical death traps, and magical creatures, making sure that no one gets to the main burial chamber. It is rumored that Ramses VIII was buried with his god-gifted item, the Cowl of Ra, a mythical headdress that is said to be able to create anything from nothing.
Ooh, very nice. So those are some starting locations.
Yeah, these are the places that will show up ideally in session 1.
Yeah. And then another thing that we did was we developed some factions, some groups that your players could become a part of, some that might aid, some that might go against, things like that. So I'm gonna kind of like take the lead on this one.
Absolutely.
So I kind of developed 2 factions that your players could become a part of. And I'll kind of explain that in a second. So the first one is the Chariots of Montu. Montu is the Egyptian god of war, and they are the first line of defense for the ancient Egyptian kingdom of Sacred Giza, which is the kingdom of the lower part of Egypt. The Chariots of Montu are your more kind of like standard martial classes, so your fighters, your frontline fighters, things like that. Which is not to say that if you wanted to build a sneaky character, you wouldn't be part of the Chariots of Montu. I'll also explain that in a minute as well. Then the other player faction is the Wings of Set. So Set is the Egyptian god of the sky and also something of a trickster. So the Wings of Set are the secret police of the pharaoh, consisting mainly of rogues and some clerics. These, the people in the Wings of Set, help to preserve the secrets and contain the magic of the gods in sites beyond their control. A primary headquarters is located in the Shepards Hotel, which is the mark of modern Egypt, and a good place to monitor the rumors and activities of those who are coming into the city. I always kind of foresaw it as like, the Wings of Set and the Chariots of Montu, like you could be one or the other, and a character that we'll be meeting later might help or might have you step in and work together, even though you might not like each other. You can be either or based on what kind of character you want to be. All right, the next faction is the Scribes of Horus. Horus is the Egyptian god of knowledge, and during the time of ancient Egypt, scribes were considered to be an incredibly important and sacred occupation, because they were the people who were controllers of the knowledge. They were the people who could, they were preserving the history and things like that. So the Scribes of Horus is an elected council to advise the pharaoh. While the pharaoh has ultimate decision-making powers, the council is there to represent the will of the people. This is a neutral faction. This is a faction that can either, they're never going to be outwardly like antagonistic towards the party. Their number one goal is to preservation and protection of the city. So if you're doing things that might put that in jeopardy, they might not be your best friends. Or if you're helping out and you're doing a good job, they might be willing to work with you as well. And then finally, the sort of antagonistic faction is the League of Explorers, which is a group of explorers from across the world who are coming to Egypt to kind of, pilfer, pillage, and take back these priceless artifacts to their home countries. It is they're trying to leave their mark on the pages of history by discovering and disrupting places that your characters are trying to protect. I say antagonistic as opposed to like villainous. That's more based on the individual characters of the thing. There are some who think that they're doing the world a favor. There are some who are maybe doing it for ill or personal gain, and there are some who are just doing it because they dig a good adventure. But in almost every case, they're going to be the faction that you are working primarily against, at least initially. So
very nice, very cool. So yeah, those factions are going to be a huge part of session 1 moving forward. And that being said, we created some important characters. These will be, you should always have arguably like 4 or 5 in a session 1, people that like the characters would know, people they might go to for quests, or people who might be like the people they're working against. So we both took 2 each, and I'll start.
Cool.
So our first one, Cleopatra the 15th, Selene, is the current active pharaoh and is most known for her incredible story. Many years after the reign of Cleopatra VII, her family began to fade into obscurity. But more recently, Cleopatra XV re-emerged in the secret lower society to reclaim her rightful place as the connection to the divine. While the wings of Set and the chariots of Montu fought for another pharaoh, in the end, the Scribes of Horus could not refute her innate magical power and her popularity among the people of Lower Egypt. She is a cunning and well-spoken leader with long black hair, piercing eyes, and an elaborate tattoo of Isis on her left arm. And so that is our pharaoh. The players will most likely be working under this individual, and she will be their kind of the kind of top authority. Anything coming from the pharaoh is going to be like super important and super big. So like maybe the pharaoh asks the quest giver to do this. It'll create a sense of urgency, and then over a long-term campaign or something like that will probably become a character of importance that the characters will eventually be doing stuff for. And then my second character is Alan Chapman. A famous leader in the League of Explorers, was known for his brilliant mind and bravery, as he has run many expeditions around the globe. He is known for his signature explorer's garb of full khaki attire, a leather long-brimmed hat, and his weathered black bullwhip that has saved him more times than he can count. He has decided that this trip to Egypt will be his swan song as he attempts to find the mythical cowl of Ra that was last heard to be with King Ramses VIII. So this character is we'll call him the primary antagonistic individual who will be working against the party. Not necessarily out to gun these guys down, but definitely trying to thwart their plan so that they can get to said item.
Yeah. All right, and then my two characters, I was given sort of the quest giver, if you will, the chief liaison. So I have created a character named Adam Set. Adam, if it's possible I'm mispronouncing that, but is ancient Egyptian, meaning receives help from the gods. So Adam Set was known as the Blade of the Pharaoh, is the military leader of the Hidden City. He is notable for being the only person who served in both the wings of Set and the chariots of Montu, and because of this, he is intimately aware of the workings of the military and is a trusted advisor. Over time, the Scribes of Horus found that it was wise to potentially have both factions working under one centralized leader, just so that they would be aware, he would be aware of who was doing what, and they would be able to utilize and analyze situations in the best way possible. So he is in his early 50s, and while he is still fit, it is clear that he has been enjoying the pleasures of his post, having maybe gone to one too many meals and perhaps missed one too many trainings. He is olive-skinned and is bald, and is generally known for his gregarious personality, but everyone knows that he is someone you do not want to be on the wrong side of, politically or socially. His eyes are cold and calculating, but his smile is warm and inviting, and because of this, you're never quite sure what mood he's in. He will sort of act as the leader, the father figure, and then he is almost always found in the pharaoh's palace. It is said that his bedchambers are hidden somewhere inside the palace walls because of all of the information he possesses, and while he's not a stranger to the outside world, the pharaoh has seen to making the palace a place that he doesn't want to leave. All right, and then the next character is kind of this like a neutral character, a character that everyone kind of knows, everyone kind of works with. So I have created Ibrahim al-Moshin, and so Ibrahim is the person who knows people. He's one of those people who has a guy for everything. If you need something, if you need to get something, if you need to sell something, if you need to track down weird information, if you need to find a guy, Ibrahim knows where to point you. While he works in the Khan el-Khalil as a merchant selling spices, his true product is information. And while the Old Kingdom isn't fond of Ibrahim, it's no doubt that he is useful. Ibrahim is in his early 30s. He is tall and rail thin. He has a short beard, and he has a sort of like a brownish hair. While he doesn't have strength, what he doesn't have in strength, he makes up for in speed and agility, knowing the streets of the Khan el-Khalil better than anyone in Cairo. So if you were to go try and catch him, good luck. That's why everyone works with him, because he knows too much, and if you try to bring down any kind of hammer, then he can not only get out of there, but reveal your secret to others. He's incredibly friendly and charming. He's always quick with a smile and a wink. Ibrahim is the place you go when you need to find someone, and while it's well known that he'll help anyone with enough coins, the pros outweigh the cons. So that is Ibrahim.
Very cool. So, yeah, to kind of guide you through our process, we basically took a couple of main areas of where the campaign would take place and expanded upon them. We created a couple of locations that would kind of be the set piece for encounters. In this case, the bazaar and the Tomb of Ramses are going to be like kind of the key components of these areas, while the city of Cairo is like also another big aspect because all of this takes place in or around Cairo, Egypt. We created the factions as, basically forces that work to either help or hinder the party or just be a neutral faction. This leads to a couple different things. It adds a dynamic where these, your actions sort of have rippling effects. If you do good things for certain factions, maybe other factions don't like you as much, or maybe the other way around. And then from factions, we wanted to create important characters because going into session 1, you want to have some NPCs that you can rely on, and they should be interesting and more well thought out than just picking a name out of a random generator and one personality trait. These people should be embedded into this place because they're going to be the ones that, they're the shakers, they're the quest givers, they're the antagonistic force. So that's kind of our little micro world building tip in that particular order. And as you can see, we had a couple of tie-ins to the macro episode with the themes and stuff like that. The League of Explorers kind of go against the idea of tradition in ancient Egypt. The Cleopatra herself is also kind of at ends with the idea of tradition because at least in this created lore, the two main factions that work under the pharaoh didn't necessarily want her in because she didn't necessarily, while her ancestor was a pharaoh, she was kind of an untraditional pharaoh in some regards. So adding that element back into it made that a little interesting, and then pulling back to that theme, and we can use that and have her push that kind of theme forward. Same with reality versus the perceived reality of the gods. We created an entire faction, the Wings of Set, to kind of be the people who control the perceived reality of it all.
Yes. Because
in Cairo, in most of Cairo, no one knows about the kind of magical aspects of it. I mean, some people do, but anybody who does know, that's kind of a secret. So these people make sure that people aren't going around slinging fireballs or magic missiles at each other in the streets, and this goes back to, they want to create order. Magic is kind of, to someone who's never seen magic, that might be just pure chaos, and they want to create law from the chaos that could ensue if other people. So all these themes kind of tie into each other, and that's kind of the point of doing the macro first, is to create these locations, these factions, and these people with the themes in mind, so that people are like, oh, okay, I see what you're going for. So that is kind of, I think, unless you've got something that you would like to add, that's kind of it for the micro episode.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the important thing to keep in mind too is that it's I'm gonna I feel like there was a theme through some of the episodes of this kind of batch of recording, which is to say that it's you might listen to this and you go wow, that's all you've prepared, ... as Cody's kind of said, this is going to set us up for a nice solid episode 1, right? A solid one shot or things like that. Obviously, it's these are some pretty standard, I would say starting characters or starting points. And then everything kind of builds from there. So for instance, at some point you might start developing characters from the Scribes of Horus, or you might start fleshing out characters who are part of the Explorers Guild or things like that. Maybe the party really isn't into a character that you developed, but they're interested in another character that you just kind of gave a name to. these micro episodes or these starting points are always just to get the ball rolling, and then kind of expand from there. And you know, I feel like there's a fair amount of, you know, in between sessions, like figuring out like what was working, what wasn't working, where do you go from here. But it's always solid to just have a nice strong foundation for which to build upon. It's not, we're not suggesting that, you know, like if you're one of those people who put in hours upon hours upon hours to build out just like the most beautiful extended cast in RPG history, like that's cool and that's awesome, but starting off with something like this just gives you enough forward momentum that you can build upon in weeks to come. So I think this is kind of to showcase, like, you don't need to build a full world before you can start playing.
Yeah, 100%. I think a big folly of people who world build specifically for tabletop role-playing games is that they put it upon themselves to do too much. Yeah. And the thing about most tabletop role-playing games, at least in our experience, and the reason we do things like world build, is it's also a collaborative game. If you have too much information that kind of takes out any kind of creative player input, I think you might as well be better off writing a story at that point than necessarily doing this for, you know, a group of your friends online using like Roll20 or, you know, whatever system you have. So in my personal opinion, if you have too much, you don't have the room to expand with it, because you never know, because session 0 is going to come around, right? And we're not going to do a session 0 episode because that would like require player input and things that we don't really have control over at the moment. But eventually people are going to come to your game. And let's say you use this as an example. There's a lot of room here for somebody to be like, well, I actually like the idea of being a advisor from the Horus faction. And so now it's like, okay, well, we didn't add too much where that's not a thing that we couldn't do. Like, we didn't create this elaborate backstory for the faction where like that's impossible. Now we've introduced an interesting dynamic. What if most of the people work for the other two factions, and then there's this kind of third mediary faction that's kind of like making sure you guys don't like, you know, destroy half of the bazaar. There's tons of different ways to do this, and like keeping it light and breezy for session 1 and then kind of building out from there, in my opinion and in my experience, is way better and offers way more to the players and yourself than to, you know, build, you know, 17 different dungeons and have, you know, an entire family history tree of these people. Like, you'll drive yourself insane, and someone's going to throw a monkey wrench into your world building. And yeah. I think that's where a lot of issues come around. So like Joe said, keep it light and breezy. We wanted to do enough where a session 1 is doable. We now have a couple of locations that the players will go to. We've got we got important characters. You know, we may later down the road feel like, oh, maybe we do need somebody from one of the different factions. But for right now, before session 0, this is perfect. This is, in my opinion, this is Gucci, baby.
Yep, we're good to go.
Yeah. So our next episode and our conclusion of this series for Fantasy Egypt, we are going to create kind of a rough draft, an outline, if you will, of what session 1 looks like in this game. We're going to use the stuff we've built. We're going to take the themes, the culture, and all the stuff that we've made for Cairo, Egypt. We're going to take all these characters. We're going to take these locations and build what you would consider your first session, like when everyone meets up.
Yeah. I'm excited.
Me too.
I think it's an interesting little experiment.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, hey, any final thoughts, or are we good on that front?
I think we're good. This was a good micro episode.
Yeah, agreed. So yeah, hey Cody, if people listen listened to this episode and they liked what we were doing and what we were about, and they would want to learn more, how could they learn more?
Oh boy, they could go to our website at www.fandomroulette.com, where you can find all of our episodes when they go live. You also have a backlog of tons of content from the Fandom Roulette channel. And also, if you go all the way to the bottom, there's a little area where you can fill out information about maybe what kind of worldsmithing ideas you had that you'd like us to explore. Whether it's historical, whether it's, fantasy made up, whether it's video games or books or anything like that. And, maybe a combination of all of those. We would love to hear from you, the audience. This has been a really... granted, we're not finished yet, but I've had a lot of fun building Fantasy Egypt, and I can't wait to find out what people what people would want to see in future episodes.
Yeah, for sure.
That being said, if you want to get at us on social media, maybe you just want to tell us there, you can tweet at us at fandomr_podcast. That is our Twitter handle. We're also on Instagram and Facebook if you want to get at us there, under the searches Fandom Roulette. And if you want to give this out to a friend, or you want other places to get it, we are on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, all the things. We are there if you search Fandom Roulette. And thank you guys so much for listening, hanging out with us. This is honestly our new tabletop role-playing game push has been super exciting, and I'm super excited to see what the future has in store.
Same. Also, please remember to like, rate, review, and subscribe. Ring the bell. Send it to a friend. All of that good stuff. Everything we can do to build ourselves up means that we can give you guys cool content with a lot of fun. So, thank you guys so much for listening. And then signing off for Fam Roulette, this is Joe.
And I'm Cody.
And as always, stay nerdy.
Stay super nerdy.